When I first started playing table tennis, I did not think about the importance of maintaining my equipment for a long time. I just thought, whatever, I'm going to use this rubber until it's completely worn out. I won't have to buy one for a few years. I was completely wrong. And over time, I realized how crucial proper maintenance is for the longevity of your equipment and the performance it maintains during that time. If you want your equipment to last longer and perform at its best, you need to take care of it. So let's get into it. One of the first things that I learned is that rubbers need regular cleaning. The rubber will accumulate dust, sweat, residue that you don't want on it. All of this stuff is going to affect the performance of the rubber. I used to not care about this, neglect it, but it's just going to damage your equipment. If you don't clean your equipment at all, you'll notice an instant massive increase in the amount of spin you can produce. If you simply get rid of the dust on your racket, you'll create at least 20% more spin. So what you're going to want to do, what I do, is use a damp cloth at the end of every session or some sponge and make sure it's damp and just wipe the rubber off. You can also buy specific rubber cleaners. I used to be into that stuff, you know, table tennis merchandise. It's rubbish. Let's not lie to ourselves here. Just use water, use a sponge, use some cloth, and get rid of all the dirt, residue, and sweat. You don't want to use harsh chemicals or literal hand soap. You don't want to damage the rubber or risk damaging the rubber. I don't know if it will, but why would you want to risk like $70? And one thing, guys, don't soak the damn rubber when you're cleaning it. I've seen some people do it. It's disgusting. They leave a freaking literally wet racket inside their case. It's probably going to damage the wood actually. It might seep into the blade and make it weird. So yeah, that leads me to proper storage. You need to store your racket in good conditions. This is nothing crazy. So when I was a complete idiot, what I used to do was leave the racket inside the bag with a billion different other things, or even worse, just expose it to direct sunlight for hours. If you don't know what I'm getting at, rubber, wet rubber, sunlight, these things don't mix. What you need to do is get a case. Your bat needs to be in a cool, dry place away from sunlight or heat. And ideally it would be isolated by itself, which is what a case does. You want to sway away from the risk of just exposing it to random stuff. I've dropped 𝗕𝗏𝗃 on my racket when I left my racket in an open bag, so I've made the mistake. Don't make it as well. When you've cleaned your racket, make sure it's not wet when you put it inside the case, and ideally wet. Let me show you something. If you're trying to store 2 rackets in a case, you'd ideally have like a double-decker case, or you just use 2 cases. I don't really like it when my good rackets touch each other, at least in terms of, you know, the top sheets touching each other. I'm a bit finicky. And look, you have to replace rubbers over time. You can't really escape it. You have to replace them. I used to ignore the fact that my rubbers were wearing out, and I used to play with them to the point where my top sheet literally felt like the same level of grip as like a freaking table. Rubbers will lose their tackiness, their grippiness, and the amount of speed that they can produce over time, and you can't really escape it. Even though the rubber may look fine, its ability to grip the ball, spin the ball, produce power, it's going to degrade over time, and you have to replace it. So the question becomes, how long between replacing rubbers? And that depends. If you feel a loss of control, the ball's slipping off your racket, you can't produce spin, all the signs that I just mentioned, it's time to replace it. When might this happen in general? Probably 2 to 6 months, depending on the rubber, depending on how often you play. If you play twice a week, a couple hours at a time, then your rubber might even last a year. But if you train seriously 6-7 days a week, 3-4 hours a day, then you're going to need to change it every 2 months at least. And look, maintaining your equipment may seem like a hassle, but it's well worth it. Your performance is directly linked. Well, not directly. There's obviously a billion other factors that come into play, but it's linked with your performance on the table. Do your regular cleaning, store your racket properly, replace them when it's time, and you're going to be fine. Keep your gear in good condition, and in return it'll give you good performances. So yeah, that's all I have. If there's anything you'd like to add, something you feel I've missed, then please tell me in the comments. I'd be happy to add it in the next version of the video. But yeah, I'll see you tomorrow.